see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom.
Welcome to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, powered by Jack's Angels, where we talk about your experiences, advocacy news, research, and today's heroes for kids. We are here to bring hope to the unthinkable but real experience of a child diagnosed with cancer. Jack's Angels advocacy mission is to provide a voice for children with cancer, to effect change for a more hopeful future for those to come. Childhood Cancer Talk Radio starts right now. Here is your host, Janet Demeter.
Welcome to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure. And it's a bright and sparkling day where we are today in Northeast Los Angeles County in California, hoping here that the day has been good to you from wherever you are tuning in. Now, here in the United States, we're adapting quickly to our election results, and I encourage you, along with other childhood cancer advocates, to please introduce yourselves to your newly elected officials, thank the ones remaining for their service, and let them know that childhood cancer awareness is important to you. Educate them. Stay in contact. This is the way to move forward during the transition between administrations. And current staffers do not leave immediately, but help the transition to stay in touch with those contacts you already have and remind them how important the current agenda is. More funding to NIH, and also that within our National Cancer Institute, 4% of the cancer research budget is not enough to save our children and to find solutions expediently for childhood cancer. The Childhood Cancer STAR Act and the Race for Children Act and the National DIPG Awareness Resolution, DIPG being the deadliest pediatric brain tumor, the resolution raises awareness for the lack of research funding and asks for more consideration for childhood cancer and low survival rate cancers with the National Cancer Institute. Please support the reintroduction of this bill to the 2017 Congress with Congressman Steve Knight. He's a Republican of the 25th District of California, and Congresswoman Jackie Speer of California, Democrat from the 14th District. This year, HRES 586, as it was called, Chad and Jack's DIPG resolution, had the support of both co-chairs of the Congressional Caucus for Childhood Cancer and was introduced in a bipartisan way. Let's make sure it's introduced again to the new Congress with these so many important other bills for childhood cancer legislation. It really does depend on us staying in contact with them. So if you're new to the world of childhood cancer or are just curious and feeling overwhelmed with these details that I'm throwing on you, don't worry, you're still in the right place. To familiarize you a bit with the whole concept, please know that some 34 children, a classroom basically, of children are diagnosed with cancer every day. And because leukemia lymphoma research and the translation of treatment for children from this research, more children are surviving a so-called cancer diagnosis. It's true. But most childhood cancers have a dim survival rate and inadequate research funding for expedient solutions for them. And we do not know what causes them. It can happen to anyone, anytime, and it does. And so we're doing our best to raise awareness and support positive change in research funding availability so that in the future, no one has to hear that there are no solutions for their child because of lack of research investment. We believe that to save lives is the most important incentive for research investment, and the focus of today's show is osteosarcoma. What is osteosarcoma? It's a cancer of the bone that it destroys tissue and weakens the bone. It most often affects teens and young adults in their 20s. Osteosarcoma begins when immature bone cells become cancer cells instead of developing into bone. And there are two types of osteosarcoma, basically, a medullary or central tumor or peripheral surface tumor. Each type has a number of subtypes, the most common subtype being conventional central osteosarcoma. Where is it found in the body? Most often in the bones around the knee joint, either at the femur, which is the lower end of the thigh bone, or the tibia, upper end of the hip bone, and the next most common place is the humerus, or the upper arm bone near the shoulder. However, it can develop in any bone in the body, and it rarely occurs as a tumor in the soft tissue of the body outside the bone. But our guest today, the real expert, I'm just listing off basically facts you can get for some of there's good information out there. But our guest today is Anne Graham, and she began an organization called MIB Agents. And in 2010, she was the director of sales and marketing for the Lake Placid Lodge and owned her own floral and event design company. She was training for a marathon when her knee began hurting. And though she had had many miles on that knee and was 42, the pain was enough to go to the doctor. And after 9 months and an eventual MRI, the large primary bone tumor was discovered. A biopsy revealed it was osteosarcoma, which is a cancer that occurs in young adults ages 10 to 20 years old. Roughly. Age notwithstanding, she was treated at MSKCC, Pediatric Oncology Center in New York City. It's a primarily pediatric disease. Over the course of a year, she was the only adult on the floor. And though there was certainly profound sadness, cries of pain, and fear, there was never complaining. And Anne felt that she had climbed a mountain seeking the wise old sage and discovered a child whose secret to overcoming was simple: gratitude. And the treatment for osteosarcoma was brutal: 30-plus rounds of chemotherapy, limb salvage surgery, or amputation, and a good chance of dying from it in spite of these brutal treatments. She was shocked to learn that there have been no new treatments for her cancer, a pediatric one, in over 30 years. Children around her were dying because of lack of funding and research. Less than 4% of the NIH budget is spent on all pediatric cancers. How can this be? Was her main question. And she knew that if she survived, she would have to make it better. And what a journey of her creation this has become, the Make It Better Agents. Friends, give a warm welcome to Anne Graham to the show.
Thank you, Janet. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, we're really glad to have you. I'm slightly wistful and envious because Anne just came back from this amazing CAC2, which is the Coalition Against Childhood Cancer, their research conference in Long Island. And what an amazing event that was. Hopefully we'll have some time today to talk about it. But Anne, what really interests me is your story, how you discovered, because you're a runner, I take it, or had been a runner, that, oh my gosh, you had this weird pain, and lo and behold, what was that like?
Right. Well, I read somewhere years ago that by the time you're 40, you should know when a pain in your body is not quite right, or something with your body is not quite right. And so, yes, training for a marathon, it was a very strange pain. So after a couple of months of having this pain, I went to a sports med doctor who misdiagnosed me for 9 months with every possible runner's ailment that you can possibly come up with. And as you said, I had a floral and event design company, and was in September of 2010 working on a very large wedding. And the Monday after the wedding, went to get out of bed, and I couldn't put any weight on my leg. So went back to my doctor and said, okay, we got to do an MRI. There's something really wrong here, clearly. So we did. We got an MRI, and it was rather puzzling, I think, for everybody. So I was in and out of that MRI tube for 3 hours while different experts came in. Different experts came in. They'd, try contrast material. They'd put me back in. And, they couldn't figure it out because they said, we think we might know what this is, but you're well past the age of what this could be. So,
how confusing is that?
It was pretty confusing. And I'm like, well, what is it? So at the end of my time in the MRI tube, the radiology technician said, okay, you need to go see your doctor. And I said, okay, I'll make an appointment. And she said, no, you need to go see her now. And I said, well, it was like 5:30. She said, she's waiting for you. So headed over to my doctor's office, and it was indeed after hours. The lights were very dim, and there was nobody there. So I went right back into my doctor's office, and she was waiting there with my MRI up on the screen, and she really didn't need to say anything. I took one look at it and went, "Oh my gosh, that's cancer." So yes, indeed, it turned out to be cancer.
So what did it look like? It was just was it a bigger than the actual width of your bone? Was it inside of it? What did it look like?
So I mean, I'm no radiologist, but when I looked at it, I've seen X-rays before where it's kind of these variants of gray and white, and this one it looked like the state of South Carolina was sitting on the top of my tibia. So it was just this white shape of South Carolina, and it was dreadful looking, and it was indeed a nefarious tumor. So
wow,
that was the beginning.
Well, no offense to sports medicine doctors, but this is I know you went through a long time of trying to figure out what it was. And what was the weirdest thing about the pain that made you feel like it was different? Just not that necessarily, we all have to gauge ourselves, but what was it for you that was like, wait a minute?
There were a couple of really strange things. One of the things that just really shocked me into going, okay, there's something really wrong here, is when I was running, my whole left leg felt like it turned into a cement pillar, and I almost couldn't feel myself lifting that leg. It was really strange. So that was weird. Normally there was kind of an ache in my leg and a pain in my leg when I was running, but the real pain was at night. In the middle of the night, it would wake me up. And, I kept putting, Asper cream on it and taking Aleve and doing that sort of thing, and just nothing would touch that overnight pain. And, yes, in fairness to that sports medicine doctor, she... it does not normally see osteosarcoma in a 42-year-old. It's
wow. I've read that too, that it's that at nighttime that it can actually wake you up. That most kids or whoever's diagnosed complains of that more so than actual pain.
Right.
We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to let everyone know in case they're just tuning in. You're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. I'm Janet Demeter, your host, and I'm talking to Anne Graham of MIB Agents. We'll be right back.
Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
If you could live your life truly standing in a place of peace, joy, and abundance, wouldn't that make your heart soar? Now you can, with Lessons in Joyful Living, with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi, Mondays at noon Central. Kimberly Rinaldi, having created a highly successful coaching practice, now teaches Lessons in Joyful Living. She believes in empowering others, and that through it, you have the ability to break through any and all barriers, thus allowing you to reach your greatest potential and joyfully step into your life's purpose. What used to take weeks, months, or even years, she can now teach you in a matter of hours with her programs. For more on Kim and her show, go to her website, KimberlyRinaldi.com. That's RINALDI.com. Then join us for Lessons in Joyful Living with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi.
It's words you never heard.
A few years ago, some fishermen off the coast of Italy discovered some pottery along with fish in their nets. Divers were called out and discovered an ancient Roman ship whose galley, or caboose, a nautical term for kitchen, was extremely intact. Some of the food uncovered on board was pickled fish, wine, oil, and grain used to make the ship's biscuits, otherwise known as dandy funks. It is thought the 2,000-year-old boat was probably on its way to Spain when it sunk and was covered by layers of mud, baggy wrinkles and all. Baggy wrinkles are another name for the ship's ropes. The mud protected the ship from wear, explaining why the leftover food on board was still in such good condition. We land lubbers may not be familiar with leftovers on the sea, but we are familiar with leftovers in our kitchen.
It's Marching Neighborhood.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
You'll always have my shoulder when you cry.
Welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
Hey, welcome back to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com, brought to you by Jack's Angels Foundation for DIPG awareness and research and for advocacy for children with cancer, on the web at jacksangels.org. Joining me today is Anne Graham of MIB Agents, Make It Better Agents, in support of children and young adults afflicted with osteosarcoma. And Anne has been telling me this story of how being a runner in her early 40s, came down with this cancer that is typically pediatric. Okay, and it was quite a long time. It took them over 9 months to finally figure out what the heck it was. And then it really asserted itself, right?
That it did. Yeah, that it did.
And so did you end up going into treatment immediately, like within days of your diagnosis?
Well, with this type of cancer, they cannot identify exactly what's going on until they do a biopsy. So for osteosarcoma, you have a biopsy under general anesthetic, and while you're under, they take out a piece of that tumor that they're seeing on the MRI, and they dash over to the pathologist, and the pathologist says it's osteosarcoma, or it's whatever other types of cancer it could be, maybe even a benign tumor like giant cell. If it's a benign tumor, they take it out and close you up and send you home and on your way. In my case, it was osteosarcoma, so they do no further extracting of the tumor. They close you up, and you start treatment pretty immediately right after you've had a few days of healing. So in my case, yes, it was osteosarcoma. So I woke up in recovery, and my surgeon and my husband were standing there, and I woke up kind of going, "Hey," and they both were just so somber. I knew it wasn't good. So
wow.
Shortly thereafter you start chemo actually pretty immediately, because it's a very aggressive cancer, and when it metastasizes, your odds of surviving it go down significantly. So the goal is to close you up, send you to treatment. They give you a chemo cocktail, 3 different types of chemo. In my case, for kids, actually, they many times get more than 3 types of chemo. And they try to get the tumor under control, shrink it a bit. Then they excise the tumor, whether through amputation or limb salvage surgery, and then they send you back into treatment for another 6 to 9 months.
Wow. That's a while.
It's a while, yeah.
I was reading about you that, when you were in the hospital, that everyone on your floor was a child. And that, tell us a little bit about that, because I'm sure there were times when you probably, were with adults in the hospital. And then tell us about the difference between the experience of being in a pediatric section versus adult.
So after my limb salvage surgery, I had to go back into chemo as prescribed. My tumor didn't have quite the necrosis, quite the tumor death that they were looking for, so they doubled my chemo at that point, and I asked if we could have some of that chemo closer to home, because I have 3 daughters that were at home. And so when we were back home, and I was getting chemo in my home sort of neighborhood. There's not a pediatric cancer center, so I was treated with adults. And adults who are in cancer treatment talk about cancer, and people who have cancer and people who have died from cancer and people who are not doing so well on cancer. They talk about cancer all day long. And kids do not talk about cancer at all. They talk about friends and games and school and everything else but cancer. You really rarely hear a child with cancer talk about cancer unless they're directly asked about it. Wasn't sure how I felt about it to begin with, but I had a couple of experiences in the Pediatric Cancer Center that really changed my life and my thinking about this disease that I had.
And what was that exactly? Could you tell us a little bit about maybe one of the children that affected you really strongly?
Yeah, there's a couple, but there's so one day I was in the waiting room with all the kids, and you kind of wait and see your team first, and then you go back for treatment in the treatment center. So this one day I wasn't feeling very good, and so I was sitting kind of by the fish tank, and I was on my phone kind of scrolling through my Facebook feed, and a friend of mine, he's an osteosarcoma kid named Adam, came and sat next to me, and so we were chatting a little bit, and then another friend of his came over who I did not know. Adam had just come back from his Make-A-Wish and was talking to this other kid, Andrew, about his Make-A-Wish, and kid said, "No, I'm not going." He's like, no, you have to go. It's really great. He's giving him tips. He goes, "Listen, they can't give me what I want." And he said, "Well, what do you want?" He goes, "They can't do it. Just doesn't matter." So he goes, "What do you want?" So now I'm in, right? I got to know what this kid wants. And he says, "I want to turn 11, and I want to go back to basketball practice, and I want to go back to complaining about my parents, and I just want normal, and nobody can give it to me." So at the same time, so I started tearing up, and I kind of nonchalantly looked back down at my phone. And on my Facebook feed, I have a girlfriend who is turning 42, and she's complaining about it. And she's complaining about her wrinkles and her, sore knees and gray hair. And I thought, oh, my God, I will never complain about getting old. I will never complain about my wrinkles. I've earned every one of them. And that changed my life. That was really big.
Thank you for sharing that with us. You got me to cry. It's true. We just don't think about it, not that we should be thinking about it and being dismal all day, but it's just, we have to realize, this is so real for so many people. And even if it doesn't touch us directly, the reason why advocates are so passionate is because you just never know. You just don't know. And then it could be something else, who knows? But cancer in particular is something that we could do something about if it has to be a priority. Right. Our kids have to be a priority. We want them to live longer. I mean, my son just missed his 4th birthday by a month. It's like people don't get it. We think we feel, I don't know about you, don't feel my age inside, and I get frustrated with the outside, but then I'm like, what? I hear a story like that, and it's so true. It's so true. It's so important to be grateful for what we have.
It's essential. There's another kid. Do you have time for another quick story?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay, so this kid, he was so cute. He's about 8 years old. His name is Frankie. And so I had been semi-acquainted with Frankie. He was younger than me, kind of me and the osteo kids or the young adults would hang out, and the younger kids kind of had their own thing. So I know that when my nurse would come to me, her name was Louise. Louise would come in with her, with the chemo for the day and the needles. And, you all have ports where the needles go in. So she would come in, and I would kind of naturally kind of move my port away from her, so that it was almost hiding my port. And so we'd have to talk it out, and I'd have to, get my courage up to put my chest forward for her to put these needles in my chest. So waiting for the team again one day, and we're in the waiting room, and Frankie's playing on a video game. Same chemo nurse, Louise, comes over to see Frankie, and she goes, "Hey, Frankie, you ready?" He goes, "Yep." He stops what he's doing, pulls his shirt up, and pushes his chest out. And I was just like, oh, my gosh. It was a moment of shame, for me. I was going, my gosh, look at this kid who is skin and bones, is so brave and courageous and just like, listen, this is what I'm here for. Let's go. Like, let's get this done. And me, the 42-year-old, is just shying away and making Louise's job harder than it should be. It was a lesson in courage and doing what you got to do from an 8-year-old boy named Frankie.
Frankie. Aw. Did you ever, these kids, it happened to any of them? Or, was it just one of those things where you're lucky to have those moments?
Yeah. Those moments gave me gratitude and courage, and I was lucky to live 30 years more than these kids. Yeah. And it does give you pause for the rest of your life to go, what have I done with those 30 years, and what would that kid have done? Frankie died. What would Frankie have done with his life with that kind of courage, with having survived what he survived? What could he have accomplished? And now what am I going to accomplish? And like anybody who's ever seen a child fight cancer, it changes your life. It absolutely changes your life.
Well, he's effectively changed yours, and hopefully a little bit for all of our listeners. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, I want to hear a little bit about. I love the story of Terry Fox and what he's done in Canada for all those folks and for all of us. So it's time again for another quick break from our awesome TogiNet sponsors. I'm Janet Demeter, your host of Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, talking about osteosarcoma. And in the second half, we're going to hear more about MIB agents on the web at mibagents.org with Executive Director Ann Graham. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
If you're ready for a big change in your work, your career, your happiness, your life, it's time for the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 Central on TogiNet.com. Marla believes that with the right mindset, anything is possible. Join us as successful life coach Marla Tabaka inspires you and her clients to explore, discover, and live your dreams by developing what she calls the $1 Million Mindset. Marla will inspire you to take action on your dreams and reveal secrets to success that will help you realize your own unique power. Tune into the $1 Million Mindset for heartwarming stories with Marla Tabaka. Learn tips and tricks to building a successful business and unlock the secrets to creating a happier, more balanced life through abundant thinking and attraction power. For more information on the $1 Million Mindset, go to our website, marlatabaka.com. That's MarlaTabaka.com. It's the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
It's words you never heard.
Here's some fun facts about noses and ears I'll bet you didn't know. Did you know your ears secrete more earwax when you're afraid than when you aren't? And generally, people with asthma have better hearing than those who don't. Now, here's a word for you. When someone gets their ears pierced, they're actually piercing their pinna. The pinna is the fleshy part of the earlobe. Did you know it's possible to sneeze so hard you can break a rib? That happened to my husband's secretary once. And according to research, you'll blow your nose 250 times this year. Scientists have also determined that the smell in your right nostril is more pleasant, while the smell in your left nostril is more accurate. By the way, twice as many men as women can wiggle their ears.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
You'll always have my shoulder when you cry.
Welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
And we are back with Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure, on TogiNet.com. Brought to you in part by Jack's Angels Foundation for Pediatric Brain Tumor Awareness and Research and Advocacy for Children with Cancer. Jack's Angels' mission is to raise awareness for the urgent need for pediatric cancer research so that one day no parent has to hear there are no solutions for their child because the numbers aren't great enough for investors. Even with the most deadly pediatric cancer, a brain tumor called DIPG, this has been happening for 50 years with literally no change in prognosis, which is barely more than a 0% survival rate, or standard treatment. Jack's Angels Foundation has been instrumental to contributing the National DIPG Awareness Resolution, in which DIPG is used as a poignant example of the neglect of childhood cancer by our medical research system, and it directly asks for more consideration for pediatric and low survival rate cancers with the National Cancer Institute's research grant process. Folks, these are our tax dollars purposed for cancer research, and 4% is not enough for our children. Please visit our advocacy page at jacksangels.org and get involved. Your elected officials have your trust to listen to you and to represent your needs and desires. Communicate with them. Children with cancer are depending on that. All childhood cancer legislation, I still don't know what's happened with STAR. I have to make a few calls about that, but if not, most of it will have to be reintroduced to a new Congress in 2017. So your support, if it's in your heart, is crucial for these kids and for those yet to be diagnosed. To support DIPG research directly, consider running or walking or running virtually in our Jack's Angels Relay for Research series, which is a combination of virtual Uberthons. Yes, check it out, virtual Uberthons, and our main event, April 30th, 2017, proceeds benefiting research at the Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute. Visit www.runfordipg.org for more information. But with me today is Advocate Anne Graham of MIB Agents, Make It Better Agents, an organization supportive of children and young adults with osteosarcoma. And like DIPG, osteosarcoma has a very poor survival rate and usually means great compromise in quality of life for those who do survive. Now, Anne Graham was shocked to discover that there had been more than 30 years of clinical knowledge of the disease with no progress in treatment. And Anne has made quite a splash in the advocacy world and has taken upon herself, along with certain key individuals who resonated with the common cause, to build the arc of MIB Agents, Make It Better Agents, on the web at mibagents.org. And so before the break, Anne was telling me about these kids who she had witnessed and who had inspired her and who are so willing with great courage to take these treatments, which, we adults tend to shy away from a little more easily. And heartbreakingly, one little boy, Frankie, that he had demonstrated this attitude to her, has passed away, unfortunately. And Anne, tell us a little bit about, sometimes it's not so easy to find out what's happened to kids, right?
No, it's really not. It's a product of HIPAA, which is, excellent privacy laws in healthcare that, in large part, benefit the patient community. However, there are parts of it that are really restrictive. For example, you can be in the hospital and being treated next to somebody who's going through the exact same thing you are going through, and the nurse cannot tell you if you're struggling,
right.
There's somebody right next door. Maybe you two could connect. So, I found that was the case with me. That there was a young adult who actually had started university, and it was October, and he had to leave his freshman year of college at Cornell, and
oh my gosh,
and come and take treatment at Sloan Kettering, and it wasn't until we kind of met again, kind of in that waiting room space. But this was actually the beginning of MIB agents, that so many times you are being treated next to somebody, or there are other people who are suffering as you are suffering, but you have no way to connect with them. So the first part of our mission statement, number one, is to connect a child who's in active treatment with a child who survived their same cancer. So we that's the name MIB Agents, because it's a Make It Better agent who survived, who wants to make it better for somebody who's still in treatment. So
Love
I care. That. Yeah, it's really. It's a really meaningful thing. We pair a survivor who has the same interests, about the same age, with the child who's still in treatment. The survivor writes a letter of hope and support to the kid who is in active treatment, and they can continue that relationship outside of MIB Agents. But the first connection comes through us. And we actually have an osteosarcoma survivor who's 19 years old. His name is Zach. And he came to us with an idea for MIB Agent Gamers. So now we continue to connect the kids through the letter of hope and support and that initial contact. But now we have a new initiative where we connect them really across the country and even in some cases internationally, kids who game. And I don't know how much you know about gaming, but it's a new thing where you can connect across the world, play across the world, and
so cool.
The kids go on headsets so they can actually talk to each other, which works really great, especially for young adults, especially for male young adults, who are not the type to kind of sit on the phone and talk about their feelings, but they can game with each other and talk through gaming. So
this is huge. Yeah, I just have to tell our audience this is huge, because some of the things in social media just in the last 5 years have changed dramatically. And it's so important what you're doing, because I'll just give an example really quickly. When I was taking my son to Children's Hospital Los Angeles for treatments and for follow-ups and MRIs and all that, at the time, we were made to feel like we lived on Antarctica or something, right?
Right.
And
right.
I didn't know there were six other kids being treated for DIPG at that hospital at the time. I had no idea. Oh, my gosh, it would have made such a difference. And now, of course, it's improving because of organizations like yours. It's your, by pioneering something like this, you're creating a trend. So my hat's off. Just had to add that in, because what you're doing is really, really important.
And, it's really hats off to Zach, who came to us with the idea and has taken it and run with it. The letter writing part, I have to tell you, started when the day I had my limb salvage surgery, which limb salvage is when they take out all the bones in your arm or leg that are affected by the disease. In my case, that was my knee, my femur, and my tibia. Are all titanium now. So I have my fibula is real, my kneecap is real, and I have about 3 inches of bone on either end. So the day after surgery, it might have been 2 days given the drugs, I kind of woke up, going, oh my gosh, what is my life going to be like? And it was really, a despairing moment. And by the time I was completely lucid by the end of the day, I got an email from a woman who had heard about me. Her name is Kelly Ahrens. And Kelly wrote this letter saying, hey, I've been there. I have 3 kids. I'm 5 years out of treatment. This is what my life looks like now. It's going to be okay. And by the way, yes, your leg does not look like it looked before, but the cancer is out of your body. It's going to be okay. Wow. And I read that letter and reread that letter, and I was just like crying, and we're friends to this day, even though she lives in Michigan. But that was such a meaningful letter because you really do feel like you're all alone. And there's nothing worse than being very sick and very alone and feeling like you're the only person who's ever gone through this, and you're kind of walking the desert going, is anybody else out there that can relate to this? Of course, like you probably didn't know anybody who ever had DIPG, and I never knew anybody who had osteosarcoma. It is a very isolating thing.
Very isolating, and so it's so important what you're doing. So tell us about the beginnings of MIB Agents.
So, that was really Kelly's letter was really important to the beginning of MIB Agents. But the thing that really kind of kicked us into gear was there was a girl named Alyssa, and Alyssa and I were on the same track of treatment for the same disease. So her mother and I had connected online, and Alyssa, I really felt like was my little sister throughout treatment. We were on the same round, all at the same time, and we finished treatment on the same time. So the last day of treatment for Alyssa, they found a lump on her leg, and it turned out to be recurrent osteosarcoma. And they will tell you, toward the end of your treatment, basically, if this doesn't work, we've got nothing else for you. There's no more chemo for you. There's nothing else for you. So for Alyssa, they had a clinical trial for her. So she went on the clinical trial, and it did not go as planned. And her mother called one day and said, they're sending Alyssa home, and they're sending her home to die. And I said, Lynn, they're not. You've got to. She has to live. Like, if it's a week, if it's a month, we have to help her live. Like, it has to be. This has to be awesome. Like, we have to make this a really great time for your family. And of course, I hung up the phone and went, oh my gosh, I can't tell this woman whose child's dying that she has to make the best of it. And right. She has another child, and she's really got her hands full. So, well, very quickly, my husband.
Very quickly, we're going to come right back here. I'm talking, just to our audience, I'm talking with Anne Graham of MIB Agents, survivor, administrator, and advocate extraordinaire for kids with osteosarcoma. You're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, and we'll be right back after these messages from our TogiNet sponsors. Don't go away. We'll hear more about Alyssa's great adventure.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
If you could live your life truly standing in a place of peace, joy, and abundance, wouldn't that make your heart soar? Now you can, with Lessons in Joyful Living, with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi, Mondays at noon Central. Kimberly Rinaldi, having created a highly successful coaching practice, now teaches lessons in joyful living. She believes in empowering others, and that through it, you have the ability to break through any and all barriers, thus allowing you to reach your greatest potential and joyfully step into your life's purpose. What used to take weeks, months, or even years, she can now teach you in a matter of hours with her programs. For more on Kim and her show, go to her website, KimberlyRinaldi.com. That's RINALDI.com. Then join us for Lessons in Joyful Living with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi.
It's Merging and Reheard.
Have you ever walked into a room on a mission to get something and totally forgot what you went in there for? I do it all the time, which makes me feel like a total sieve head, as the Brits would say. Some might blame it on old age, but a recent study reported in the Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology suggests the simple act of passing through a doorway causes memory lapses. It appears the brain regards a doorway as an event boundary and effectively files away whatever you were thinking about as soon as you step through. What's a word for the feeling your thoughts are being stolen? Nucleptia. So, what's the solution? Try carrying an object that reminds you of the task. For example, if you go into another room to get a pair of scissors, carry the object you want to cut.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
You'll always have my shoulder when you cry.
Welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
And I'm back here with our final segment of Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, encouraging you to check out Make It Better Agents at www.mibagents.org. On the web, I'm here with Anne Graham, survivor and advocate for kids with cancer. And Anne was telling us kind of the story. There's a lot that goes into it, but basically she's telling us the story of how MIB Agents began. And she's telling me about this girl named Alyssa, who is, I guess, one of the biggest inspirations. So if we could continue with her, I know, Anne, you had said you'd just been told by her mom that she was sent home to die, basically.
Yeah. So we said, all right, we've got to make the best of this, and we have to have her experience as much great life as she can in her however long she has left. So Alyssa was a great dancer, as is her mom and her sister, and she lives in Virginia, and so we created a New York City dancer extravaganza experience for her family. So my husband got them a great hotel in New York City, the Surrey, which is a beautiful hotel, and over 3 days we did Rockettes, backstage passes, front row seats, American Girl doll on Fifth Avenue. They gave them very special treatment, had dinner and cake in the American Girl doll store. They did Mary Poppins on Broadway, orchestra seats, and their last day they did Nutcracker at Lincoln Center. And at the end of the show, they let Alyssa, who is now an amputee, dance across the stage after everybody left.
Aww.
And she died a few weeks later, and just shy of her 11th birthday. And Alyssa, to this day, inspires us to make it better every day. So that Alyssa was really our first mission, and they kind of kept coming after that. They just, I was getting better, and we kept finding kids who were suffering and really needed to be uplifted, and so we'd find a way. And we've been doing that for 5 years, and then just this past February, we made it official and finally became a 501c3. We've been self-funding up until this point and going off of favors, really, of friends for experiences, and we still do that as much as possible. Mm-hmm. But now we're able to accept donations, and as we believe that we should continue as a true nonprofit, and we're a 100% volunteer organization, so there are no salaries. So every donation that we receive has a direct and profound impact on the kids that we serve and on osteosarcoma.
Fantastic. Folks on the web, they're at www.mibagents.org, on Twitter at agentsmib, and on Facebook at MIB Agents. Please look them up, support them if it's in your heart, and help this thing grow, right?
Right.
Looks like you're also starting a groundbreaking conference called Factor. Tell us about that.
Right. So Factor started really because of a mission that we were undertaking for a 13-year-old boy named Daniel. Daniel was on home hospice care, and his mother, who is a space engineer by trade, kind of really started having a profound interest in Daniel's genomic profile. So Foundation One had done a genomic profile of Daniel's tumor, and Teresa started to kind of break down that tumor and kind of look for germline mutations and what could possibly be the driving factor behind osteosarcoma. As you know, a couple of months went on, we started gathering other genomic profiles, and Teresa really started breaking down these profiles, and the more osteosarcoma gene profiles that she had, she could, kind of move the needle a little bit and kind of come a little bit closer to, okay, I think these are some common denominators. So we met in D.C. after I had been on Capitol Hill lobbying for the STAR Act, and we were kind of lamenting that since the beginning of time, literally osteosarcoma is found in dinosaurs until now. How are we still not able to treat this disease? How are we still having 13-year-old boys named Daniel dying of this disease? So we ultimately decided that it wasn't up to them, it was up to us, and we decided that the experts built the Titanic and Noah built the Ark, and we needed to become Ark builders if we wanted to move the needle and improve outcomes for kids with osteosarcoma. So the next morning we had a meeting with Jonathan Agin from CCTDI and Max Cure, and he goes,
awesome.
He goes, well, you need a conference. And I said, a conference? We're a small nonprofit. We can't afford a conference. Can't we just put it all in the cloud? What do you mean a conference?
Need a conference.
So fast forward a month or two, and we had floated the idea of a conference to the MIB agent community and the osteosarcoma community in general. Really, really patient-driven. Patients had gone to their doctors and said, hey, if there were an osteosarcoma conference, would you go? And overwhelmingly, they said yes, so we have ourselves a conference.
I'm just going to let people know here how important this conference is, okay? Because Jonathan Agin, and he's been on our show before, we featured CCTDI. They're incredible. It's a nonprofit biotech completely devoted to eradicating childhood cancer in all its forms, and osteosarcoma is one of their main projects right now. Jonathan was one of the founding members of the DIPG Collaborative and the steering committee for that. And the reason why I bring up DIPG a lot is that it was the forgotten one forever.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And all the kids dying of it. And it's only because of parents and people organizing like you are doing that they are bringing in millions now a year for that research. And it's that finally, if it weren't for that, if it weren't for parents coming together and creating something and now starting a conference for osteosarcoma like you're doing, this is why we're making progress. Not because the government's helping most vulnerable citizens, which it could, which we still need to rally for, but you need to know that what you do as parents, what you do as concerned citizens makes a difference, and it makes a big one. And so I'm sorry, I just had to stop you there and let people know why this is so important. And that why MIB agents and organizations like this one need support. So please go to www.mibagents.org and support them. Continue. I love this story. So you have Factor coming up.
So we now have the first ever osteosarcoma conference in the world, and we have, by the grace of God, we have the top minds in osteosarcoma, the top surgeons, clinicians, oncologists, scientists, and researchers coming. But even more astounding, we have osteo warriors, so the kids who have survived. We have their parents, of course, and a remarkable group of bereaved parents. These are parents who have lost their children to osteosarcoma, some as early as last month. And we had a huge boom that we all it took us all aback in August. We lost 4 young men in August with osteosarcoma, which including Daniel. So it really lit our fire, and it really is moving this thing forward. And the champions, and I'm going to say they're not the childhood cancer advocates. I'm going to call them the childhood cancer activists. That are the bereaved parents. They are the activists, and they're the people who are not fighting for their own kids anymore. They're fighting for everybody else's kids. They're fighting for the kids who will one day get this disease, that that they won't have to suffer as you have in losing Jack, that Teresa has in losing Daniel. So these kids' lives had real meaning. Because they are improving outcomes through their parents, and it is not as it should be. But this is the hand many have been dealt, and they are truly the real warriors, the real heroes. Really, they have nothing to gain for themselves through this.
Hey, someone tells you your child's going to die and you don't have anything for them because their numbers don't matter to investors. Ooh, that's going to tick a few people off. And that's the blowtorch under my behind that gets me going. Yeah. It's like, yes, they do matter.
Yeah, they really matter. And the last time I heard that at a conference, I said, that's just not true. If money is our only problem, we don't have a problem.
Thank you.
That's just not the case, because if every parent who lost a child were told you're going to have to give up your house to keep your kid, they would do it in a New York second. And there is some money being raised for these rare diseases, which, by the way, all pediatric cancers are considered rare. So there is no pediatric cancer that they say, oh, it's a common pediatric cancer. All pediatric cancers are considered rare. The only ones who are getting the needle moved on their outcomes are the ones that have an active patient community that's driving funding, that's driving change in their community. And many times it is the bereaved parent. So hats off to those. Well,
and for concerned citizens greatly. Like you. You didn't lose your child, but you experienced it, and you've seen those children. You're able to translate your experience and be moved in your heart. You're the hero, okay? And I wish we had more time today, but we're going to have to get off the air in just a few seconds here. But Anne, thank you. You are my hero of the week. Your Childhood Cancer Talk Radio's hero of the week. And everyone needs to visit www.mibagents.org. Go look at them at MIB Agents on Facebook. Get involved. There's advocacy page at jacksangels.org also. You can make a difference. Your voice matters. Don't forget that, especially in this democracy of the United States. So, and for all around the world, you're an awesome example. Thank you so much, Anne. I really appreciate your sharing.
For more about Janet Demeter and her mission, visit jacksangels.org. As founder and president, Janet strives to assure that children with cancer and their parents have a voice.